Here we have a new topic. It says, should we have reservation in the private sector? Or rather, the topic says reservations in the private sector, right? It's a very sensitive topic, and when you're writing on sensitive topic, you must be very logical and not biased, right? And if at all you want to give your opinion, you must ensure that you back that opinion with not any kind of subjective emotions, but I would say you must back that opinion with cold logic. And this is precisely what we're going to see in this video on reservation in the private sector, right? What have I done in the first paragraph? Now, I will read the sentences straight away. I have always been in favor of reservations. This is how the writer says. I have always been in favor of reservations, and then he puts a comma and puts a conjunction. But it makes sense. Why? Because you must always put a conjunction, or rather, I would say you must always put a comma before a conjunction if the conjunction is separating two independent ideas. There are two independent ideas. The first one is here, and the second one is here, right? Right, and look at this. How are these two independent ideas? When I say independent ideas, that means they are basically two sentences that have been joined by a conjunction, appropriate conjunction, I would say, and that conjunction has been preceded by a comma. These are vast videos, and you must also focus on the grammatical construction of the sentences apart from the content, right? I have always been in favor of reservations, and the author says, but reservations based not on caste, religion, or ethnicity, but on this. Not X, but Y is the idiom. You must have learned this in your cat grammar. That I am happy not because I am rich, but because I am in love. Right. So whenever you have these kind of idioms, it always gives a very good impression about you as a writer, right? See, I have always been in favor of reservations. The author gives a point, right? And he flatly says, I have always been in favor of reservation, but he puts some kind of caution. He says reservations based not on X, right? What is that X? Caste, religion, or ethnicity. And then he puts a comma, but on something else. And what is that something else? But on why? What is that why? Such factors as socio-economic background, learning disability, physical disability, and other similar factors. Right at the start of the essay, he has given categorically his point, and he has mentioned this point with immense force and character by using a very strong language. Not X, but Y. Learn these idioms. You must use these idioms in your group discussions, in your writing, so that you give the impression of a very good writer and speaker, right? I've always been in favor of reservations, but reservations based not on caste, religion, or ethnicity, but on such factors as, and what are those factors? Such as basically means examples. Again, this is a very important thing. Whenever you are writing, and if you have examples in mind, you always use the word such as, or such factors as. You can always split the idiom. Such factors as socioeconomic background, learning disability, physical disability, and other similar factors. The author says a person with such background. What kind of background? The background mentioned here. So such is basically referring to what? These kind of background. A person with such background and disability could be from any caste, religion, or ethnicity, and thus these criteria, which criteria? The criteria mentioned here, socioeconomic background, disability, and all these things. He says, and thus these criteria, which have higher, which have higher degree of rationality, refers to what? These criteria. The pronoun which, understand this, the pronoun which always refers to what comes immediately before it. And while writing, you must ensure that if you are using which, you must ensure that it refers to what has come immediately before it. And the author says, and thus these criteria, which have a higher degree of rationality, and because it's a break, I have put a comma, right? It's a comma. Why? Because it's a break in the sentence, right? These criteria can be universally and justly applied. Why universally? Because these criteria are more important, are more individual than caste, religion, or ethnicity. The caste identity is a collective identity. The religion identity is a collective identity. Ethnicity again is a collective identity, but learning disability, physical disability, and other similar factors like socio-economic background, they are not collective but personal identity of a person. And any personal identity can be universally and justly applied according to the writer. On the other hand, he says there is no convincing and rational justification for reservations based on caste, religion, and ethnicity. This for is basically because. The use of the word for here, I have used this in my previous essay as well. It basically means because. Because a person belonging to a particular social group might be from an affluent family and thus may not be in need of a reservation, or he might be competent enough. Again, you have a pause, both mentally and physically. See, whenever I take a pause and I'm inserting some kind of information, I always put a comma. So, how is the sentence going? The sentence says that a person belonging to a particular social group might be from an affluent family, and therefore he may not be in reservation, or he may be competent enough, both mentally and physically. He may be competent enough to find, right? This is how the sentence goes. But since you are putting an interrupter, he may be competent enough both mentally and physically to find his way out in life without much struggle, and therefore giving reservation on the basis of caste religion does not make sense. Moreover, he gives an additional reason: reservation simply based on caste, religion, or ethnicity, whether, again, you have a interrupter. Reservations simply based on caste, religion, or ethnicity, whether in private or public sector, create rift among the members of society, resulting in caste and religion based politics. That is, and what is that referring to? Politics. Just as which refers to what comes immediately before it, that also refers to what comes immediately before it, resulting in caste and religion based politics that is detrimental to the growth and development of an organization or the unity of a nation. In the very first paragraph, the author has given the reason as to why reservation based on caste, religion, or ethnicity may not be a good idea, but reservation based on physical disability, learning disability, and other similar factors might be a very good idea. And in that, he has included the socio-economic background as well. He says, I do partially agree with the statement given above, but the statement is universal. Of course, many a time, understand this, many a time you might criticize the statement because it may not reflect the exact idea, and therefore you may tweak it a little and say that this is how the statement is. I would like to add this, I would like to subtract this from this, and this is how it would look better. So he says, I do partially agree with the statement given above. Again, you have a comma. Why? Because you are separating two independent ideas with a conjunction, and when you have that, you must have a comma before the conjunction. Please do it. This is a rule of grammar. I do partially agree with the statement given above, comma, but the statement is universal and does not speak much on what kind of reservations for what kind of work, or reservations based on what factors. So though you say reservations in the private sector, you don't mention what kind of reservation, what kind of work. Simply it is a sweeping statement. I would be pleased to see in private organizations reservations for a particular kind of work in which the physical makeup or the mental aptitude of the person does not matter much. So the author has given reason. He says reservations in the private sector is fine, but reservations for a particular kind of work, again, this is basically a resumptive modifier. If you go through my videos on VAT, I have categorically mentioned there that a resumptive modifier, a summative modifier, a free modifier, they are very beautiful ways of carrying your idea ahead. You must understand such things. And people who have not yet gone through those modifiers, you can go through my VAT product and you will find the use of how to use a resumptive modifier. How does it look? It says, I would be pleased to see in private organizations reservations of a particular kind, or reservations for a particular kind of work. And what kind of work? A kind of work in which the physical makeup or the mental aptitude of the person does not matter much. So you can always put an idea. This is one complete sentence, right? I would be pleased to see reservations for a particular kind of work. And then you take this idea and you basically add something more about it. a kind of work in which the physical makeup or the mental aptitude of the person does not matter much. This is what we call as resumptive modifier. These are very nice ways of expressing your ideas. It shows that you really are into reading. For again refers to look at this now. For such work and vacancies, for such it's a preposition, of course. For such work and vacancies, private organizations should give a chance to individuals who are from the underrepresented caste or communities. So the author says that in private organizations we can have reservations, but not for any kind of work, for only those kind of work in which physical makeup or mental aptitude does not matter much. And of course you can give reservation a chance to people who are from underrepresented caste or communities. But for work that needs, the author says, you must divide the kind of work. You must not give reservations for any kind of work. He says for work that needs a certain kind of physical makeup or specific mental aptitude, I would not recommend reservations of any kind. You have put a comma. Why? Because you have a prepositional phrase and after that you have the main clause. So whenever you start your sentence with a prepositional phrase or any kind of phrase, at the end of the phrase you must put a comma. I am just applying all the rules of good writing, of which you must be conscious while expressing your ideas, at least in the written form. For work that needs a certain kind of physical makeup or specific mental aptitude, I would not recommend reservations of any kind. For instance, look at the continuity. The ideas are flowing logically in one direction, and this is very important for a writer. You cannot keep on switching between your ideas. Start an idea, build upon it, come to a conclusion, and then begin a new idea in the form of a new paragraph. For example, can we imagine reservations for the physically handicapped in the armed forces? What kind of writing is this? I would say this is a rhetorical device. You have asked a question, but not to seek an answer. Am I stupid? And you put a question mark. You mean to say I am not stupid. That is a rhetorical way of basically expressing something. And it gives a punch to your language. Can we imagine reservations for the physically handicapped in the armed forces? No, we cannot, because such a scheme would defeat the very purpose for which the armed forces are meant. Similarly, I would not recommend reservations for a kind of work that needs greater degree of mental aptitude, because such a reservation scheme would supersede, would replace the inherent skills that the work demands. So the work demands great leadership qualities. But because of reservation, you have given that opportunity to someone who is not competent enough. So in this paragraph, the writer says, based on the kind of work, you can have reservation. Reservations in which there is not much need of physical makeup and mental aptitude, you can have reservation for people who come from poor background or from underrepresented caste or communities. But he says for work that needs a higher degree of mental aptitude, you must not have reservation. Of course, if someone is from the underrepresented caste or communities and has the ability, definitely he must get a chance and he will outsmart the others. No doubt about that. The kind of reservation, the author says, the kind of reservations discussed in the above paragraph should be there in both public and private sector, because I firmly believe that, and what is the belief? That both the state and the citizens of that state are responsible for the socio-economic. It is welfare. I have missed this word, socio-economic welfare or development. I would write the word here. I have missed this, right? So the author says the kind of reservations discussed in the above paragraph should be there in both public and private. Why? He gives a reason by using because. Because I firmly believe that both the state and the citizens of that state are responsible for the socio-economic development of the people of that state. So it would be absurd to say that the upliftment of the downtrodden and the underrepresented people of any social or religious group is the business of the state and not of the private bodies. The author says that the private bodies are equally responsible for the socio-economic development of that particular state or country. So how is it possible that you have reservations in the public sector but not in the private sector? They refers to basically the private sector. They are equally responsible and must conscientiously carry out their responsibility. Who are they here? The private bodies. We must remember that Though making profits is the primary goal of all private organizations, the social responsibility of creating a better society is tied to that goal. And any scheme or design that helps the private organizations in creating a better tomorrow without doing any harm to its primary goal would go a long way in improving the life of the citizens. The grammatical construction is flawless. Look at this. It's such a long sentence, but it's perfectly written. He says we must remember that. And what is that? Look at this. We have a sentence. Though making profits is the primary goal of all private organizations, the social responsibility of creating a better society is tied to that goal. And then you have a new thing. And you have, so again you have a new sentence. And because you're joining two sentences, you must use a proper conjunction preceded by a comma. I'm repeating this time and again. Any scheme or design that helps the private organization in creating better tomorrow without doing any harm. So any scheme or design would go a long way. So this is the subject. Any scheme or design would go a long way. And what comes between the subject and the verb? The subject is any scheme or design. The verb is would go a long way. And what is that between the subject and the verb? You have basically some kind of clause. Any scheme or design. And what kind of design? That helps the private organizations in creating a better tomorrow without doing any harm to its primary goal would go a long way in improving the life. So you must understand these constructions. I have written the VAT videos and you must go through it because it will definitely help you frame your ideas in a better way. And then he concludes by saying, thus reservations in private organizations for the right job and for the right kind of people would indeed be a wise thing, a step that would be welcomed by people of all. What is this? It's a summative modifier. What is a step? The step is basically reservations. Thus, reservations in private organization for the right job and for the right kind of people would be indeed a wise thing. And what is that wise thing? That wise thing is a step that would be welcomed by people of all sections of society. What do you have? You have a conclusion. What do you have? You have basically a this particular paragraph focuses on why private organizations should also come up with a scheme of reservation. And here the author says that why reservation should be there only for a particular kind of work, not for all kind of work. And in this paragraph the author says why reservation should be based not on caste, religion and ethnicity, but based on something different. So here he focuses on reservation based on what? He focuses on reservation for what kind of work? Here he says reservation for reservation in the private sector and why, and then he concludes. So this is a perfectly written VAT because it is logically building on every idea and then comes to a conclusion. It is persuasive, it is convincing, and that is how you must write and speak.